Another edition of Roadhouse Live. Today is May 30th, Bender, 2023. We are coming off of a long weekend that was very enjoyable for hopefully everyone. As we come into the day, we have the NASDAQ again blazing on fire on the backs of AI, AIO. In addition to that, we have the Dow basically flat to down. We have a VIX kicked in the face. We have the dollar down, and global markets were basically, let's just call it mixed up. So as we come into the week, we know that tech is on fire. We know that the big, and I put this in the biggest quotation marks you can ever come up with in quotations, the debt ceiling, which Biden and McCarthy appear to have agreed on. And here we are. Here we go. This is our day. We saw some massive puts come in at the end of the week for this week. Looks like several of them are going to be absolutely destroyed. Pretty much all of them are going to be destroyed, but they're going to be worth keeping an eye on as the day develops, whether or not they double down or at the open, they just bail on all of them. We're talking several $1 million lines rolling through on Friday for this week. So we'll see exactly how that kind of plays out as we get closer to open and as we actually open and the money starts firing. Bender, your weekend, tell us about it.
Oh man, well, let's see. I spent more time at the ranch. We actually had a little get together with some friends on Saturday. That I bought a bottle of bourbon. That was my contribution. One of the neighbors out by the ranch made some ribs that were freaking amazing. But I said I would bring some bourbon. So I brought a bottle of bourbon. It's called Second Glance. It's actually some winemakers that were making cabs in Napa. And apparently they weren't doing it right. And so they kind of got shunned and they said, fuck off. We're going to make, it's actually whiskey. It's not bourbon. They said, fuck off. We're going to make whiskey instead. But they basically used all the barrels they had from making wine. So it's a little bit sweeter, not as sweet as some of the bourbons, but it was a hit. And people that normally would not drink a full glass of bourbon on ice were drinking full glasses of bourbon on ice, and everybody was shit-faced. It was pretty fun. It was entertaining. I woke up feeling like dog shit, but it was fun. And then the rest of the weekends I was spent cleaning up property, burning more piles, making more piles, that sort of thing. So that was my weekend.
That's good. It sounds like a nice weekend. Yeah, I enjoy my weekend also. I was focused on the forest. I spent a lot of time talking to the forest. A lot of time. I enjoyed it.
Does it talk back? Like
it does. It's always talking. It's never not talking.
Is this attributed to the homegrown?
No, I was fairly clean with the exception of a couple of joints. A couple of beers, a couple of glasses of bourbon, but it's like I was completely clean other than that. It's interesting though, Bender. It's like when we get like the market, doing what it's been doing over the last several weeks, several months, no matter what you want to call it, whatever time frame you want to use, it becomes interesting when you remove something that consumes so much of your mental space and you get those 3 days to basically not look at a screen and do nothing but look at, nature, which is constantly evolving and changing, and our markets are constantly evolving and changing, bringing on new identities. And where I live, it's like it's, we get legit 4 seasons. So seeing the kind of change and evolution that takes place with the landscape and the trees and the stream, and even how, rocks that you never saw all of a sudden that you seeing grass come back to grow, um, seeing like frogs and lizards kind of moving about when you haven't seen them in a while. It's like that kind of stuff is really, really neat, and kind of helps disengage, as far as, the world continues to turn and everything continues to happen and evolve, whether you're paying attention to it or not. And I think in some ways, seeing that and being able to come back in and look at the market with a clean eye, I would say that when we're banging tops here, in theory, quotation marks once again, it's just really, really interesting overall. Now, believe it or not, there's really no news that's new, domestically. So we had the debt ceiling. There's still a lot of debate whether or not they even have the votes to pass it. So that's a major question mark coming into the day and the week. They're running out of time to be able to do it. So I think that we could be pretty headline sensitive as far as stuff coming out of DC. I know several on both the right and left have said, hey, this is not really what we signed up for. And I know the McCarthy is getting a lot of heat, from the right, the far right, as far as a deal that he signed. Basically, people just calling it a whole bunch of bullshit, that he's now, basically one of the establishment idiots that blah blah blah. Anyways, that's what we have coming into the day. There's really not a lot of new news, unless you want to get into global affairs. China is still struggling with the reopen. Russia, and Ukraine, things are going on there that are intensifying. Apparently, there were drone strikes in Moscow in residential areas, which is seems a little bit, interesting. Um, how that battle continues to kind of move in a lot of ways. And oddly, and looking through some of the headlines that aren't getting a lot of attention. So you have Afghanistan, you have the Taliban now attacking Iran because they're not hardcore Muslim enough. That appears to be a thing, and they're using a lot of some of the U.S. weaponry that was left behind. Again, really, really interesting, like globally, as far as, outside of the U.S., as far as news. Internally, really nothing. It's like, and I'm sure Sonny's going to jump into that here in a little bit. But before we do that, Bender, tell us about these charts. Tell us about how we keep on, at least, it looks as if I can pretend that just maybe that we kind of top this area 3 times on the ES and have struggled to break above it, the past couple of nights. So why don't you walk us through all this?
All right, let me pull up share my screen here. Okay. So what we're looking at here is a 15-minute. I'm going to go back to, let's go back to a 60-minute real quick, and you can see where some of these levels come from. So I have fibs drawn from the lows at 4061 or so from the 4th, to the highs that we put in on the 18th and the 19th there of 42.25.25. Just looking for the extension as a potential target if we're going to keep going to the upside, 42.70 to 25. We'll go into 15-minute here. And, going back to the 60-minute, you can also, is that shown there? All right, you can kind of see this. This is a daily. You can see this trend line that I threw up here that we're kind of up against. We popped through it a few times here, but you've got 1 point of contact there, 2 points there with just some peaks through it. So we'll see kind of how that responds. We're up against that, which you can see here on the 15-minute. Right up in here around that 42.45 level. You can see where that comes into play. The other lines that I have on here that I'm interested in, if I go back to the 60-minute, you can see this fair value gap here on the 60-minute that we did kind of probe down into there and then bounce right into that fair value gap. The top of that 42.3275. So going back to the 15-minute, you can see where that came from. I've got 3 a.m. low marked down here, 42.22 half. So coming into the day here, I want to see if we're going to be able to maintain above that fair value gap there, 60-minute fair value gap. You can also see the one that we put in here on the 15-minute, right? But so really what I'm looking for is to see if this candle right here is going to hold. Let's change. I'm going to change the color of this one real quick, make it stand out a little bit. You can kind of see that candle there. I'm looking to see if this area in here is going to hold. Looking for the pattern, the setup that it gives us on 5-minute, trying to get some clues from that to see if we're going to continue pushing to the upside, maybe up towards that trend line or that extension of it, 42.72. Also worth noting that the top side of that 60-minute fair value gap at 42.3275, that is the midpoint between the 3 a.m. low at 42.22 half to the pre-market high. So that level is certainly going to be on watch. So on a pullback, I think this area is key for the day. If we find ourselves below that, then we're going to be looking at that 3 a.m. low, 42.22 half. And then, we can see the area where we had gapped up and pulled back into that gap. But that gap, we filled it. But you can see the bottom side of that gap perfectly has acted as support there, 42.20.25. So if we get below 42.32.75, if that area cannot hold, then we're looking at that 3 a.m. low, the bottom of that gap, and then we have to start, if we get below that, we got to start looking down here, 4,200, right? So that's kind of how I'm set up for today, is below this area, looking at that 3 a.m. low, the bottom side of that gap, and then this 41.95 area. And then, on the flip side, if we come down and tickle this area, but we hold it as support, maybe create a 5-minute fair value gap on the way up that holds as support, and we get a break, above these pre-market highs, then I'll be looking up here to that 42.70, 42.72. That's what I got. So
what do you think? That's what you got. You see it. I mean, now the important question, Whitner.
Okay. So we're coming into the morning with overnight inventory being 100% long, right? So, I would suspect that there will be, it's possible we get a little profit taking. If this is one of those days where we're going to open higher, and because that overnight inventory is weighted long, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a little of that profit taking, maybe pull back early, and if that happens, that more often than not, that first, call it 15 to 30 minutes, a lot of times that move is counter to what the rest of the day is going to bring. So, if that occurs, but we can hold these levels, then, I think there's a good chance that they're not freaking done here. So I don't know. I can't, I think everybody's looking at this like we were when we were talking, a few minutes before the show started, and it's like, holy shit! Like,
Yeah, dude.
they're
We're
ready to
getting
roll.
back into those ranges to where you have to start whispering ATH.
That's just,
I'm serious. I'm
yeah.
not being sarcastic. And
Uh,
look, when you have the Nasdaq with the ability to move like this, and with how much tech is weighted everywhere, you know, every day you wake up and it's up 2%. It's like it's a matter of time before you're there. That's just math, right? It's like you go
it's
up
just
2%.
maths.
You go up 2% every day without a pullback, and yeah, no, it's like you're gonna get there. Um, and that's basically what we've had over the last little while, you know. So yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know how to play it. I'll be honest with you. It's like,
Well,
okay, so if this is the case, am I a fool knowing what the trend is? Am I a fool, Bender, for not being like, you know what? I'm gonna grab some 2025 SPY 450 leaps
I mean, with that
and
kind of
just
time, sure, why not?
and just sit here and stroke, for the
But
next year.
I find when I veer away from you know playing what I see, on a 5 minute, 15 minute, um, and I start trying to decipher why the market's doing what it's doing from a macro perspective and not just the charts. It's like that's when I
Well, to be fair though, it's like the market is not is you struggle being able to find the through line between the market moves that it's made recently in the macro environment. So China was supposed to come on strong and buoy everything. Their market is rebounded nicely, but the data isn't there. Our data is not exactly great. And there's some feeling that, because of this, we're going to get another bump in rates. Like as far as, things holding strong. But when I say the data not being great, inflation not pulling back and some of that PCE data and core data not being as weak as what we need it to be in order to get inflation in check. It's like this move in a lot of ways, it's like, was it anticipation of the debt ceiling being done? Is this a sell the news event? Is it even done? It's like this is weirdo times. This is a lot like, you know, the best comparison I can give it from a macro standpoint, Bender, because you're saying that you it's not something that really, you know, that you use. Remember when we were down there banging that 3600, 3580, whatever that
3580.
is,
Yeah.
3580 down there. Remember when we were banging in that? And we were just like, this is fucking stupid. What are we doing? Are we never going to use semi chips again? Are we never
Yeah.
going to, is this, are we, are, is the world over? So that move and that aggressive pounding to the downside that was absolutely neck breaking, relentless. This is literally the opposite of that, to where the macro story doesn't necessarily justify either one of the two extremes, yet we've played both sides of those extremes. On a longer trend and a longer time frame, things return to the mean, right?
Sure.
That new normal is then created. But what does that look like? Because from what we're being told, AIO is everything that matters, which means what? We don't know. We don't know what it means. The market is acting like it's good for the market, but we don't know what it means necessarily for the economy and individual people's lives that support the economy. That we don't know. And we probably won't know for several more years, because eventually they're going to have to monetize all of this wonderful market cap that they've received. They're actually going to have to make money and prove it out. Again, very interesting. Does it happen in the near term? Do we have to go through several more earning cycles? So we're like, well, this AI thing really isn't doing a whole lot anywhere. It's like, now what? Anyways, um,
Oh, it's going to do things. It's definitely going to do some things.
right. You and I totally agree on that. But it's like, so what market cap should Nvidia be trading? It's like in some of these outlier tickers,
Right.
like a let's say like a Micron, like a Marvell, um, where should they be trading? It's like because there's only one Nvidia.
One NVIDIA.
There's only one. So, anyways, we'll see how it plays out. We'll do what we can. Sonny, what you got for us, buddy?
Morning, everyone. So, talking about NVIDIA, it hit the 1 trillion market valuation this morning. So, it needs to hold above 404.86. Keep that. News wise,
that gap's probably not a big deal, right? We shouldn't even think about that. No. What about the one below that? Shouldn't think about.
Don't worry about that either.
No, don't worry. Okay, I just want to make sure. Thanks.
Ain't worrying about gaps today.
You're always looking out for me, man. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. So, news-wise, like you said, struggled this morning to find some productive, meaningful news. Pretty much the same what we saw on Friday. Upgrade AI, NVIDIA AI. So using that theme, bunch of upgrades that came in. Coin, Ford, CHPT, and Microsoft, they're talking about AI is going to push them higher, and they're going to do self-driving cars and things like that using AI. Microsoft was interesting. The price target was raised to 375 by Wedbush. And also the two beer makers that are not named Bud also got upgrades, SAM and STZ. On the downgrades, the only meaningful one I saw was SPR, the Spirit Aerosystems. So keep an eye on that, as well as BA, since they're one of the major part suppliers for BA. Coverage initiated. So the quiet period on KVUE, this was a spin-off from J&J a few weeks ago, an IPO. So the quiet period ended on it, and pretty much everybody is either neutral or equal weight on it. So we have both Citi and Goldman, JP Morgan, RBC. They're pretty much neutral or what was the other one? Hold. Yeah. So Musk is in China. He's talking about doing expansion of the Tesla factory. He's also saying he's against decoupling. He wants to meet with the premier of China. So let's see if that happens. Plug Power is planning to open 3 new hydrogen plants in Finland. Last week, when they had announced expansion, they got a nice move up. Let's see if you see any flow on this. Netflix and Disney, they repeating the headlines from last week. They're cutting more older shows and movies out to reduce their expenses. Faraday Future, FFIE, they have their investor day today. They're going to talk about the delivery timeline. I think they delivered like 5 cars so far.
That's good.
And
do you think they'll be up to 8 soon or no?
I hope so this year.
Okay.
They can, not do any recalls. Maybe they can recall the 5 and ship them out again and say they delivered 10. I don't know. NVIDIA and SMCI, they are at a conference in Taipei. So, SMCI has already made some comments. It's got another 5% move today. They are going to accelerate, everything strategy of the product innovation, manufacturing on large scale, green technology, blah, blah words. They made a nice move. Next up to speak is NVIDIA CEO. I expect much more coming out of that. So there's going to be some PC manufacturer also out there, like Hewlett Packard is also out there, and a few other things. And defaults are rising in the commercial real estate, like we all knew that was happening. That's a headline too. That's about it, man.
All right.
Really
Well,
struggled this morning to catch any good news.
there really wasn't anything. It's like you have some interesting global stuff kind of bouncing around out there that's
Yeah.
just like, huh, that's awfully curious. It's like, what's that really about? But domestically, it's as if this debt ceiling thing was push, 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 hype, 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 hype. Like like the fire hose, the media turned on the fire hose and was just gunning everybody to where people don't even understand the debt ceiling. We're talking about debt ceiling. It's like
Yep.
it was that extreme. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, McCarthy Biden deal, okay, done. That's it.
Gap up.
It's
Yep.
over.
I was watching the futures when they opened. They're like a big gap up. Then it just sat there for like rest
Yeah.
of the day and then gapped up again.
Well, and then faded,
Yeah.
faded to cover the gap out, and then repopped again like it didn't happen. Like they were like, oh, okay, what happened? Oh yeah, no, that happened. Okay, well, let's go back up here. Um, so it's like we're really void of any type of news. We do have a Fed speaker. I think a couple today, but I think we have one at 1 that's somewhat important.
Yeah, that's later towards the end of the day, I think. Yeah.
And then we do have some data after open. Data this week is kind of limited domestically, but it's like we do have to be aware of headlines coming out of DC regarding the debt ceiling. I know
Right.
that those on the right are not happy with the deal McCarthy cut. The question is whether or not they can be like, hey, we still have the votes to go ahead and push it. But
And this is a short week, so keep that in mind.
yeah, it is a short week. So it's like all of those factors come into play. It's like in theory, this thing has to be, really, sewed up pretty good here in the next couple of days in order to meet the overall deadline next week. So I guess we'll play it as it comes, play it as it lies, whatever it may be. But just be aware of where we are. Bender, thank you for going through the levels. Sonny, thank you for going through some news and stuff.
News.
I think. That's all we got. We got about 12 minutes. You guys have anything else you want to add?
Mm-mm.
No,
Nope.
I don't think so.
All right. Let's have a good day. Let's have a good week. We'll see you guys soon.
All right.
Thank you.